Imagine, if you will, a portrait gallery filled with paintings of a single figure, each rendered by a different artist. One painting highlights the regal authority of a king, another emphasizes the power of a mighty conqueror. But in the gallery's center hangs a portrait by Luke, a physician, historian, and beloved friend. This image is of the same figure, yet it radiates tenderness, humility, and beauty. It is the Son of Man, stepping down to dwell among the weak, the suffering, and the outcast. Luke's Gospel invites us to linger before this masterpiece, to marvel at its details, and to see in its colors the humanity of Christ and the glory of God. The book of Luke is not merely a historical account, but a carefully crafted narrative. Written around AD 60, it stands as the first of a two-volume work addressed to a man named Theophilus, whose name fittingly means lover of God. Luke's orderly account begins with the miraculous birth of John the Baptist, the forerunner of Christ, and unfolds to reveal the life, ministry, death, and resurrection of Jesus. Luke's Gospel is unique in its focus on the humanity of Christ. Unlike Matthew, who appeals to the Jews with a Messiah steeped in Old Testament prophecy, or Mark, who captures the Roman imagination with Jesus' miraculous power, Luke speaks to the Greek mind. His is a portrait of Jesus as the perfect and universal man, a figure of wisdom, compassion, and grace, embodying the highest ideals of human dignity. Throughout Luke's Gospel, Jesus' humanity shines brilliantly. He is born in the humblest of circumstances, a stable in Bethlehem, where angels proclaim his arrival not to kings but to shepherds, men of the fields and flocks. It is in Luke alone that we find the tender story of the infant Christ being cradled by Simeon and Anna in the temple. Both recognize in him the fulfillment of Israel's hope and the light for all nations. Luke weaves his narrative with a particular emphasis on Jesus' interactions with society's marginalized. Tax collectors, sinners, women, and children, these are the characters who populate his pages. Take Zacchaeus, the diminutive tax collector who climbed a sycamore tree to see Jesus. In that simple act, Zacchaeus demonstrated the kind of faith that moves heaven, and Jesus responded by declaring, "Today salvation has come to this house." Such stories show that no one is too far from God's reach. Luke's Gospel is a treasure chest of parables and teachings, many found nowhere else. Consider the parable of the Good Samaritan, where an outcast becomes the hero, offering a wounded stranger the kindness and mercy denied him by his own countrymen. Or the story of the prodigal son, where a wayward child returns home to find not punishment, but a father's embrace. These narratives are not mere moral lessons. They are windows into the heart of God, a heart that beats with compassion for the lost. Even in his miracles, Jesus embodies grace. In Luke, he raises the widow's son at Nain, heals a crippled woman on the Sabbath, and cleanses 10 lepers. These acts are not only demonstrations of divine power, but also glimpses of a kingdom where suffering is banished and joy is restored. Characters who step out of the shadows. Luke's Gospel introduces us to vivid characters whose lives are forever changed by their encounters with Christ. There is Mary, the young woman from Nazareth, whose humility and faith make her the mother of the Messiah. Her song, the Magnificat, echoes the themes of reversal and justice that permeate the Gospel. The proud are brought low, and the humble are exalted. We also meet John the Baptist, the voice crying in the wilderness, whose boldness paves the way for Christ. And then there is Peter, who, though he denies Jesus 3 times, finds forgiveness and a calling that will shape the church for generations. The world of Luke's Gospel. Luke's narrative unfolds in a world of bustling towns, Roman decrees, and temple courts. The historian's touch is evident in his meticulous attention to detail. From the census of Caesar Augustus that leads Mary and Joseph to Bethlehem to the Jewish customs that frame Jesus' upbringing, Luke paints a vivid backdrop against which the gospel story is told. Imagine the narrow streets of Nazareth, the shimmering waters of Galilee, and the towering temple in Jerusalem. These places, though distant to us, come alive through Luke's words, drawing us into the world where God stepped into human history. Lessons for the modern reader. What does this ancient story say to us today? Luke's gospel reminds us that God's kingdom is for everyone, Jew and Gentile, rich and poor, the sinner and the saint. In a world often divided by race, class and creed, Luke's portrayal of Jesus challenges us to embrace the outsider, to welcome the prodigal, and to extend mercy to the wounded. Consider the persistent widow in Luke 18, whose unrelenting pleas move a judge to act. Her story is a call to prayer and trust, a reminder that God hears the cries of his people. Or think of the two disciples on the road to Emmaus, whose hearts burned as the risen Christ opened the scriptures to them. Their experience invites us to seek Christ in his word and to walk with him daily. A journey to the cross and beyond. Luke's gospel leads inexorably to the cross, the ultimate act of divine love. But even here we see the humanity of Jesus. In the Garden of Gethsemane, he prays with such anguish that his sweat falls like drops of blood. On the cross, he extends forgiveness to his executioners and promises paradise to a repentant thief. The story does not end in sorrow, for Luke also gives us the triumphant resurrection and ascension. Jesus, the Son of Man, has conquered death and now reigns as the Son of God. Conclusion: a gospel for every soul. The Gospel of Luke is at its heart a love letter to humanity. It tells of a Savior who walked among us, felt our pain, and offered us hope. It is a story that transcends time, for the truths it proclaims are eternal. As we read Luke's account, we are not merely spectators, but participants in a grand narrative. A story that invites us to know the Son of Man and to live as children of God. In the end, Luke's gospel is like a well-worn path through a vast and beautiful forest. It beckons us to walk it, to pause and marvel at its wonders, and to emerge transformed. Let us tread this path with open hearts and eager spirits, knowing